Good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, I want to say Happy Memorial Day. I hope everyone is having just an outstanding weekend and an outstanding day, holiday. I'm very excited to tell you guys about one of my favorite stories about a Marine that I've read about since I was a kid. First and foremost, I want to explain what exactly was going on at the time. The United States was fighting tooth and nail for an airfield named Henderson Field on Guadalcanal, which was the location of the first major offensive in the Pacific against the Japanese in World War II. The Japanese, on the other hand, were preparing for their own assault, just a major attack against the U.S. lines that were stretched thin from injuries, sickness, and even casualties, of course. The Marines, however, were dug in pretty much to defensive positions as well as they could have been, and they prepared themselves as well as they could have for Japanese assaults. They had set up machine gun nests, barbed wire fences, they had supporting artillery, and they constructed fighting holes and bunkers with overhead protection that had long lines of sight that would pretty much put the enemy at the disadvantage of having to move across open ground to get at them. But the Marines themselves had their own disadvantages, and there were quite a few of them. The jungle took a huge toll on the Marines, just the jungle warfare, the jungle conditions that they simply weren't used to. And the outdated weapons that they were using didn't exactly hold up to those harsh conditions. They were under constant rain, which not only took a toll on their bodies, but also on the airfield they were defending, which meant that no supporting aircraft against the air, ground, and the sea bombardments that the Japanese subjected the Marines to nearly every day. The Marines were hanging on by a thread, and even the enemy knew that. That's why the enemy forces, the Japanese Imperial Command, sent some of the top units of the Japanese Imperial Army to the island to push Marines off once and for all. The Japanese had one major flaw in the strategy, however. They gave the Marines just enough an advantage to hold them off. They insisted on full frontal assaults, banzai charges basically, with the intention of breaking a hole in the lines of the Marines and spreading out from there, similar to what you would see from a German blitzkrieg attack, where the tank and assault forces would break through and race behind enemy lines and take advantage of their enemy, the rear forces. This is a strategy that the Imperial Army, the Japanese Imperial Army, had used very effectively all over the Pacific campaign, from China, Indonesia, the Philippines, and the Wake Island. It had some success against the smaller outposts on Guadalcanal, when squads of Marines would be on patrol or they were set up as listening posts or outposts for larger forces that were served to use basically as a warning for an attack or a larger attack. But they had very little success against the well-dug-in Marines on Guadalcanal. Sure, the Marines were low in numbers, but they were able to take out quite a few enemies running through their open fire lanes before they were overrun and forced to regroup. There were several attacks and assaults on smaller scales every day on Guadalcanal. Unfortunately for Marines, they usually ran into much larger forces when they did encounter the enemy outside of the perimeter of the U.S. lines, and they were often overwhelmed. When the attacks started on Henderson Field, thousands of Japanese were prepared for one massive assault. So the stage was set for those top soldiers of the Imperial Army to make a final push on the Marine airfield and eliminate them from the island. The Marines on Guadalcanal, however, had just received their own reinforcements in the form of Louis Chesty Puller's Marine Command. They were sent straight to the front lines and were placed on a hilltop right in the middle of the U.S. forces. They had a little more firepower than the other Marine units, in the form of a few more machine guns than units were authorized, commanded by Platoon Sergeant John Basilone. Manila John Basilone, as he was called, was first in the Army and he fought in the Philippines, which is where he got his nickname, and then he enlisted in the Marine Corps to get back to the fighting, because he believed that the Marines would be the fastest way to get back to combat. He was moved all over the country before he was brought in to Guadalcanal. And while the Japanese prepared for their own major assault and their last major push, John Basilone prepared his own forces. He made sure his extra machine guns were carefully covered from enemy fire, protected by barbed wire enclosures, and they were overlooking those long open sight lines that would enable them to see the enemy at a long distance. When the Japanese finally unleashed their offensive, they ran right into the machine guns that he had carefully prepared for them. The Japanese made their banzai assaults over and over again, reducing Basilone's 15-man platoon into just 3 Marines manning their machine guns. Basilone worked back and forth between the other Marines, offering both covering fire, clearing weapons that jammed in those horrific jungle conditions, and at one point, he fought his way back through broken lines with a .45 caliber pistol and a machete to get ammunition and vital supplies like extra barrels for his Marines that were burning them up with heavy machine gun fire. He ran to one spot, single-handedly carrying a water-cooled .30 caliber machine gun that weighed over 100 pounds and set it up to offer covering fire for another Marine just to get his gun set up. For almost 3 days, John Basilone and his Marines fought back the Japanese banzai charges. In the end, the Japanese had pretty much beat themselves. Waves and waves of Japanese soldiers throwing themselves into machine gun fire led to over 2,000 dead and many more wounded. For his actions over the course of the battle, John Basilone was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. There's much more to the story of John Basilone, but we can't cover that all today. So until next time, Devils, happy Memorial Day, stay safe, and stay motivated. Geronimo Splash. Alright, good evening, Devils. This is Sweat, and I'm sorry this episode is going to be up so late. Really had a lot to work on this weekend as far as, and this week, with the cruise and in real life stuff, and I wanted to get this up earlier, but couldn't think of a better day to do this than Memorial Day. What you're seeing now, though, is actual footage from the open lobbies that I have to record all this, and I couldn't do this without you guys. So I want to encourage you to follow me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter. I can't keep putting videos up because so many people get left out, and I feel bad because so many people send me messages while I'm still recording. And all I want to do, I want to get you guys involved, and I don't want to leave anybody out. So if you guys could, please, if you can, follow me Facebook, follow me on Twitter for these open lobby announcements. I hope you guys can make over to Respawn Army app. I'm really doing great things there. I think almost every time I put up a video there, it takes the top spot or the top 2 or 3 spots. So thanks again for that. Thanks again for everything and all the support you guys give me, and y'all have a great weekend.